I'm ChosenArchitect, and this is all the mods tin. Now today is going to be one heck of an interesting episode because I want to challenge myself. And challenge myself, you might ask, why would you want to do that? Well, we are tasked for the All the Mod Star to craft ourselves Eclipse Ember fuel that is, well, sort of hidden if you take a look at the quest book. And when I say hidden, it's because it's encased in a dark tank. Now, we need 16 buckets of Eclipse Ember fuel, and that may seem like a trivial task. But let me tell you, it requires multiple steps to technically set up just to get one, a lot of time and a lot of coal to be able to get your first one. And well, it's just going to be worth probably automating. Automating, you might ask? Ah, yes, I actually want to try and use Just Dire Things to automate the entirety of the fuel production. Well, of course, using it for the primary tasks of automating it, I definitely want to incorporate a little bit of applied energistics and also industrial foregoing souls also into the mix. Now, to break down this recipe can be kind of hard to sort of show because there are multiple steps that we have to take in order to get each individual item, including the fluids. We're going to be handling the placing of blocks, the placing of fluids, the picking up of fluids, the right-clicking of items, all of those things which can be done with the Just Dire Things mod. And so to be able to even get started, we need to first start crafting up all of the individual coals. So we have our primal coal, which to get primal coal, we are going to have to take a block of coal and we need to break it. So this is the operation here, block of coal. We have to put it basically on some sort of goo, and then that has to be clicked with an item, and then it will convert into primal coal. And then that primal coal can be broken. Apparently fortune does apply in this case, so we can use a fortune pick to break this. That seems pretty logical. And then we take that primal coal and we turn it into a block. So we're seeing that it's just kind of taking coal and sort of compressing it, but there's like a mechanic in between. Then this primal coal is then going to be taken and gooed again to be turned into the Ember Blaze, or the Blaze Ember, and so on and so forth. This process is going to repeat all the way up until the Eclipse Raw Ember. So if we can get at least our first setup working, we can then adapt that to all of the other ones. So I think this will be the first step in our process. Then we need to worry about the fluids, which is something we're also going to have to keep in the back of our head, because I'm almost positive we can't go back, right? So we can't go back to Void, which we're going to need basically the coal here for each individual step in our process whenever we start to make the fluids. These have to be dropped into the actual fluid. So like I said, my challenge for myself is to try and automate this and automate it with you guys just by using Just Dire Things, and also getting the chance to show off a few cool mechanics that you may not know about the Just Dire Things mod. So over here, I have set up a few rooms. Yes, I'm finally utilizing the inner wall, and I've set them back about 3 blocks. This should be more than enough and should give us plenty of room to technically automate this entire process. So I guess without further ado, let's go ahead and start working on how we're going to set up the production of all of the individual coals. So as of right now, I have myself a Shadow Pulse goo. I'm going to go ahead and I want to place it right here. So the goal is to have all of my individual blocks of coal essentially placed and wrapped around like this. Now, we can do this with a placer. And there's an interesting way that we can go about actually placing them exactly in this orientation. And a way that we can do this is by using an advanced block placer. So the advanced block placer actually has an interesting mechanic that you may not actually know about. And that's the fact that it can technically place blocks and filter where they are placed, even if the bounding box is like a large size. For example, if I make this a 3x3 and we scale this up and move it over, we can position this just like this, where it basically is wrapped around. But instead of wrapping the entire thing with blocks, I can tell it, hey, only place on these particular blocks. Now, to get this to work correctly, we have to place this item inside of here and set it to an allow list, saying this is the only place that you can actually place these blocks. But you do have to define where exactly the direction is going to be placed from. So if we want it to be on here, this to be the bottom, we need to look in this direction, and I'm facing east. And then we can go ahead and set the direction to place the blocks from the east side. So when we do this, the only place it'll have to be able to place, for example, these mud blocks, once we give it some power with like a gate, is going to be on the east side and specifically on these blocks. Or at least that's how it should work anyways. I believe it is powered. It's running, right? Okay. Maybe it is actually the opposite. Maybe it's on the west face, like it's looking this way. Let's just switch this to west. There we go. So yeah, it's the opposite direction. So we need to be looking in the direction that we want the block to be filtered from, technically, I guess. But there we go. So notice how it only placed right here. Like, this is a really cool and useful feature, honestly. Now, something else I also want to do is make sure this Shadow Pulse goo is going to be clicked. Now, I could use a simple clicker, but I actually kind of want to use an advanced clicker because there's something else I kind of want to have attached to this Shadow Pulse goo. So over here, we can define our area just like we did on the other one, where we push this over here. And so once we have that block selected, we want to tell it what face to actually click on. And I think in this case, this might have been where I got a little confused. The east side, I think, is where I want it to technically right click. Don't want it to do anything else, just simply right click. And we should be able to set the item we want to send to here, which will be Skulk. So I'll take some Skulk, place it in, and it should right click on here once we give it some power. This is another thing we're gonna have to handle is the power, but there we go. So it right clicked. Now, this did technically place a block right here, which is directly behind it. And I think if we also set this to west, it's going to place out here. But we actually don't have to worry about this because there is going to be a block technically that is in this position, so it won't be able to place a block there. This is kind of an issue that this has sometimes where it, like, for some reason wants to place the block outside of the area. I still don't know why this is the case, but let's set that to east. And there it goes. It's like placing blocks on all the sides. This is the main side we want, and it's also technically right-clicking this and completing what we want. So now I get to pull back out the personal shrinking device and to hook all of this up. I think just a regular cable is going to be just fine for this operation here. So on the back of the advanced clicker, we are going to have an export bus, and we are going to specifically be sending Skulk. Now on the Skulk, which I don't want to have this fully plugged in yet, but on the Skulk, we can actually craft Skulk utilizing echo shards, which I think would be a good idea. So let's have a crafting card just in case we ever need it. Honestly, this isn't going to be consuming all that fast, but it's still worth having in here. There we go. So now I can craft this, and I do need to make an auto crafting recipe for it. So there we go. And toss that in here. Nice. Okay, so that is solved, and Skulk will always be going in here. And same for any of the other ones, because we'll probably end up duplicating the same process on the other side. Now, on the block placer, we want this to place coal blocks. So we do have to make coal blocks, which I think we have coal blocks automatically being done, because I think we have this in storage. But for right now, we have tons of compressed coal that we're getting from other sources. I think our mob farm for one. And this is just going to have an exporter on it as well that is going to be saying, hey, go ahead and do some coal blocks. And you know what? Might as well, just to make sure that it can handle this, we'll say, make sure we can make coal blocks, because we don't already have a recipe for that, but we do have a recipe for coal, which should pull from our essence. This should be more than fine. Tossing that in there. Beautiful. But let's talk about how we're going to make this a little faster. So this Shadow Pulse goo, we can actually tick accelerate. And so time to bring out the soul surges for the tick acceleration. So I'm going to bring the cable through here and up, and in this cable, we are going to put an interface, just like we've done with all of our other soul surges, and connect it into our soul surge network like that. Perfect. And then we'll have our cable, and then directly on the back, this is why I said there's going to be a block there, we're going to be soul surging the Shadow Pulse goo. This makes this thing incredibly fast, and we definitely will see the speed increase having this on here. Now, as soon as I plug these cables in, this thing, I guess, will start kicking off. I do need to make sure that that's placed there so it has a place to go. And look at that. It's already placing, and it has already formed the primal coal. Now we need a way to technically break it. And this is where this entire area right here is going to use a single breaker, which is going to make and save us a lot of resources, specifically on our fortune books. So just like everything else, the advanced block breaker will go right here, but the area defined should be enough to cover the entire section here. So I'll raise this up one, and then we'll also make sure to increase the Y value just like that. That way the whole area is covered. Thankfully though, the filter on this, we can filter down here to allow, and if we go to just dire things, we can drag in the coal we specifically want it to break. In this case, I'm going to be doing the primal coal and the blaze ember, and that's the only thing that should be allowed to be broken there. Just as an example, I can go ahead and put in my Eclipse alloy paxel, and as soon as I give this some power, you can see it is now breaking and fortuning the coal. And it's just going to constantly keep repeating this process. Now, could I hide these machines behind a wall? Technically, yes. But I actually kind of like having them exposed. It also allows me to see what blocks are kind of doing what. And if you guys were to ever explore this world, it is nice to actually have them out in the open so you can also open them really easily and see that they're actually there. Now, this side right here can't be started until we technically have the processing and auto crafting of this coal into its block form, which is what's going to need to go inside here. Now, everything else is configured. We have this automatically set up, and we technically need to pick the blocks up off the ground. So a good way we can do that is by using an interface and a item collector. So we have the Just Dire Things item collector. Might as well use that since we're on theme here. And this will just simply go right there. Actually, it doesn't need any power or anything, but we do have to define the area. And thankfully we can set up the area here to be centered just like this and make this cover the entirety of a 3x3. Let's go ahead and drop this down just like that. And then we just need to make it longer. So all the way up till it covers the entire room here. And we're done with that. This should pick up all of the items that drop from being broken by our block breaker. Now with the items collecting, we do need to make a couple of recipes, right? We do have this coal that is coming in, so we need to be able to convert that primal coal into a block. So we can just set up an autocraft for that. That's pretty straightforward. And then we need to say, hey, primal coal, autocraft and go into this slot right here. But this is going to be where we encounter our first kind of problem. If we do this and we have this working, it is going to work non-stop. Meaning that it's going to always craft up to the next tier and it's going to infinitely produce the highest tier. I think though, there is a way, while it is a little bit more advanced, there is a way for us to technically limit the amount of blocks that we will have per step. And that way we can, for example, keep a certain amount of each tier or each step in stock, which we're going to need when we actually start working towards our fuel. And not only that, it will help in our coal consumption so we don't end up backstocking a million of these coal blocks. So to be able to do this, we can use our applied energistics system. This is actually really nice. It doesn't cost any channels to do this, and we can control our block placers with redstone. So a level emitter is going to be one of the best uses right here. This is going to be perfect. So that way we can monitor how much of this coal is currently in stock and emit a redstone signal based on that. And then we can use this block placer's redstone modes to assign it to be either on or off, depending on if we've met a certain criteria. Now, just to make this easy, by default, it'll say it will emit levels when they are above or equal to the certain amount. So let's say we want 256 of these always in stock. So if we have 256 of these, this will emit a redstone signal. Now, if it emits a redstone signal and we have those in stock, we technically want this to shut off. So we need to technically assign our redstone signal to respond to that. And I do believe that low meets that. Like if it's set to high, we'll notice that this requires a redstone signal to run. So if you set it to low, it will work until it receives a redstone signal, then it will shut off. So that's kind of what we want. We want this to be on low and we want this to be emitting when it goes above, and 256 seems like a pretty good value. So with that, this is basically ready to go. And I think we could even test that right now and test our theory by me just putting my pickaxe in here. Make sure I turn my magnet off for now. And we'll notice those items going in. And let's take a look at our primal coal from Just Dire Things. There we go. And oh, our primal coal technically is going to be converted into blocks here. So actually, this is a bad way to test as of right now. But if this was filled with blocks, then we would no longer have that operation happening either. So honestly, maybe setting the value lower than 256 would kind of do this. So let's just say 9. Like if we have 9 in here, you'll see that it's actually kicking on and turning the redstone signal on. And when it does that, it's temporarily shutting this off. So this should be the perfect example right here. I went ahead and filled this with blocks. We can see that that has met or exceeded the 9, and right there, it has shut off and is no longer working. Exactly what we want. And we need to basically represent this for just about all of them. And so just like that, look at this. It's all nice and running. Perfect. So I replicated the same setup on the other side, and this is already set up, essentially just going up in tier where we're going to get the void over here. Now, I still have to make the pickaxes though, right? This is where we're going to need like as high a level of fortune as possible. And I'm just basing that fortune off of this, where it does say that fortune works in the quest book. So I'm assuming that it does. As you can see right here, it says Blaze Ember ore is affected by fortune. So yeah, I'm going to take that as a fact, hopefully. I know that the other ores, I do believe, are not affected by fortune, however. But yes, this should be generating it slowly but surely. And as soon as I kick this on and get ourselves some pickaxes, which I'm just going to use, let's see, as far as the picks go, I'm probably just going to use Celesti. Actually, it doesn't really matter, right? I can use the Eclipse. We have plenty of this. And there we go. So I'll just do 2 of them, making sure they have fortune on them. Yeah, fortune 5 each seems pretty good. And thankfully, the Just Dire block breaker actually charges the pickaxe that's inside with power. That's one of the really, really powerful things about the actual block breakers here. But there it goes. This side is going to kick off. And as soon as there's enough, it's going to start forming the blocks and placing them into here. There's our first one. And I think I did set this one up correctly. It hasn't started placing yet. Allow list. It should. Oh, I didn't set the side. It needs to be set to south, right? There we go. And now it's going to start placing. And there we go. So we are technically producing the highest tier, which is the Eclipse coal. And yes, this process can go even faster technically if I set the speed ticks a little lower, but I don't think it's going to need it. This seems fast enough. So now that this process is completed and automated, it's now time to put these individual components to use. And that's going to happen over here, where I'm going to try my best to convert fluids. Now, right off the bat, this is where things might become a little bit confusing and challenging, because we need a way to pick up fluids, a way to place fluids, and a way to drop items into the world to convert said fluids. And we also need a way of technically detecting when a fluid is existing in the world. And thankfully, all of that can be done with Just Dire things. Now, our first step is to make the polymorphic fluid, and then to toss a polymorphic catalyst into it. Or into water, technically, because water is what we're going to be creating polymorphic fluid with. So this is our first task, is basically going, is water present? If so, drop a polymorphic catalyst, and then when it does drop the polymorphic catalyst, go ahead and collect that polymorphic fluid. That's kind of the way I'm thinking about this. So now for this, I'm thinking of setting this up a little bit weird. The only thing we really need to worry about is detecting our fluid. So I'm going to have a sensor that is going to detect the fluid going on top of the Shadow Pulse goo. So this just needs to detect a fluid, and we can do that by setting it to an allow list and emit a signal when when greater than in the value. And then we need to say, hey, what kind of signal do we want it to emit? For example, a strong signal in this case. And it's going to be the block directly in front of it. So it's going to be detecting this area. Now, that's pretty straightforward. Now, the only reason I want this is so that way I can technically send a pulse to an item dropper. So the item dropper, thankfully, we can tell this specifically where we want it to go. So I want it to drop an item right there. And we can set this to only work on a pulse mode. And so this can receive items inside of its inventory, and then it is going to drop one item whenever it receives a pulse. And of course, you can change the drop amount. You can also delay the pickup time, so that way you won't pick up be able to pick up the item until that time has gone away. Pretty interesting little thing right here, and could be used for other farms. So now in this particular case, this will detect if there is a fluid, and then we'll send this a pulse. We might have to jumpstart this. I'm I'm almost positive this should always work. We shouldn't have to worry about this. But then we also need to handle fluids. So we need to place a fluid, and we also need to collect a fluid. So this is a fluid placer, which will then place a fluid, and we can tell it specifically where to place the fluid, which is super cool, that it doesn't have to be in the position where the fluid's going to get placed. And same for the collector. The collector can be over here, and we can also tell it, hey, go pick up this fluid that's over here. Like, pick it up from this place. And this one, we can set a whitelist, and we can set filters inside of this machine. We don't have to worry about any sort of redstone. Now, on the advanced dropper, when it comes to actually sending the items into it, I do want to kind of regulate how many can go in here. Since it doesn't have a single slot, no, it actually has like 9 slots in here. So that's going to be 9 stacks of items if I don't regulate. Now, a way to regulate with applied energistics is a little bit more complex, requiring you to use a level emitter to shut off your like exporter and stuff. But we can actually make this very simple by integrating a couple of mods here. So if I do industrial foregoing, industrial foregoing, there is a item transport node or transporter. And we can use the item transporter right here, and we can regulate with our transporter. This is actually going to be something that is going to be very helpful for us. And I can keep like 16 in stock or something like that, right? Of the polymorphic catalyst. So we'll grab our polymorphic. Let's just say we want to keep 16 in stock, so I can make sure regulation mode is turned on, make sure it is set to the whitelist, and I do this. And whenever I activate this and set this to go in, we'll see that it'll stop right at 16, and it doesn't allow any more in, even though this is keeping it in stock. And then we put a crafter card in here and so on and so forth, and I am powering this from the top. So this is actually a neat way to regulate items into something by utilizing an item interface and also using an item transporter. I can feel this could be kind of helpful, considering you would need like 576 items of, for example, the shadow, which I'm only keeping 256 in stock right now. You would need that just to simply keep this thing full, and an exporter would just dump everything into it. So now to start this whole thing, we just need to give it some water. And once this gets water and power, this whole thing is going to really kick off. Now, I don't have the other side set up. We'll work on that as I get this up and running, but I want to be able to see a proof of concept here first. So the water is going to start filling in, and I will need to give this some power. Let's just get our cables back in here first. There we go. So that is going to start filling with water. Perfect. And the placement of it should just place exactly where it's at. Like, it just automatically, once there's at least a bucket in here, and it has the power to do so. So that means that I am going to have to, well, make sure water doesn't flow out everywhere. So a way that I can do that, believe it or not, which is kind of cool to be able to place water right into this spot, is by using the R's lights. So yes, you can use a mage light and drop the color down to make it invisible. And whenever you place this down like this, it's not only going to light the area up, but it will also prevent the water from flowing. This is really cool, meaning I can make invisible, like, kind of barrier blocks for the water here, and it shouldn't flow anywhere. This should go for all of the fluids too. All right, so I guess it's moment of truth to see if all of my configs worked. I'm going to give this power first, and as soon as I give this power, it should place the water. And it is getting auto picked up. Oh, I didn't define the water here yet. Okay, let's make sure to shut this off. There we go. And I've already made a mistake. And you know what? Mistakes happen. We're all human. I think we can fix this by putting the advanced fluid collector inside of our inventory, clearing all the settings, just make sure everything is nice and clear. And then I'm going to go back into here, and I want to drag that bucket into the filter slot. Let's set it to allow list. Drag that into the filter, make sure I check my area that's defined, and we're all ready to go. We just got to give this power, and there we go. Perfect. Okay, so this is now collecting that polymorphic fluid. This is placing the water. That's dropping the catalyst in. This is perfect. This is exactly what I want to see doing. This is great. Okay, and so all of this that we just set up needs to be transferred over into, well, at least 3 more setups. And then the third one, we might actually set up, I don't know, some time fluid maybe? So now when setting up the filters for all of these others, essentially the next tier, I have the polymorphic fluid that leads, and then also the next collector is going to then collect the blaze ember bucket. that is going to get piped into this fluid placer. This placer, of course, doesn't need any filter, but the sensor needs to detect if there is blaze ember fuel present to then send the coal out. And then on this side, we are only going to be collecting void flame fluid. That's going to get piped into here. And then this one is looking for the void flame bucket. Once it detects that, it's going to send out the Eclipse Ember fuel or coal. And then that then will turn into Eclipse Ember fuel buckets, and that will ultimately be what builds up inside of our final collector. So it sounds like a lot, and all of this automation technically for 16 buckets, but I thought it was a really fun automation to do, and I can't wait to see this all put into action. Also, by the way, I did realize that I don't technically need the Shadow Pulse goo on the first starting point. But I think I'm going to keep it. So now I'm thinking I'm just going to hook all of these up. So this is going to be the final product. It's going to run right back into that fluid placer, and same on the other side. And this should loop everything, also making sure this one flows in. And I think this is going to work. This is going to be kind of interesting. Okay, so we have our fluid here. This is going to start working. I just got to get the wrench in here. Okay, let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and set the fluid, and this doesn't have power yet. That all has power. Actually, everything has power. So I think as soon as I wrench this, it's going to start, I think. I'll make sure my magnet's off. All right. And that will fill up. It converted. Oh, it changed, got picked up. It should get moved into here. Did I wrench this one? Nope. There we go. That one's then going to get moved. Oh, it does it. It converts it. That then gets picked up. I got to wrench this one. And then final stage. There we go. We are making Eclipse fuel, which is now being stored right here. That is absolutely beautiful. And why did I need this? I mean, just for the all the mod star, really. But I don't know what major uses this fuel has. Maybe there's some special modifiers that we can maybe use. Either way, though, this is a beautiful art piece. My goodness, between all of this, doing the conversions, making all of the coal when needed as well, and then converting the fuel as needed. Oh man, that's perfect, because these will stop whenever this fills up, then this one will fill up, and so on and so forth. So that's perfect. Now the only thing we have left to do is to technically fill that tank. I don't know if we can do this, but can we just simply right click to pull the fluid out? It doesn't look like with this tank, no. Looks like we're gonna have to use a pipe for this. So I'll just simply take the fluid, just like so, wrench it out, and perfect. There's the ember fuel now filling up into a dark tank. And if I was to do the max 18 stars I think needed to make the bee, well, we would need technically 18 times 16 worth of this fuel. So this farm, I think, would easily be able to sustain that. Okay, so I do want to test this out at least. This is the simple fuel generator, and I don't know if I can see how much this actually generates off of this fuel, but there it goes. Ah, it does 4,000 FE per tick when you automate this. Oh, that's interesting. So at least we know that this can generate 4,000 FE per tick off of this fuel that we're slowly watching drain. That's actually some good information. This would be kind of crazy to automate, but still 4,000 is not too bad, especially when I think we're generating plenty. And if you have ways of generating coal, this would be no problem at all. But you know what? This process has been honestly kind of interesting. This is the dark tank, I do believe, with 16 filled, and that should have completed this quest. There it is. Perfect. So there's our dark tank, and it is completely filled. That is kind of interesting. And you know what? I don't think I ever would have automated that had it not been for that quest. So now I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I hope you learned something new about ways to automate and all of the different tools available to you to automate systems like these. And I really hope you did enjoy today's episode. If you did learn something new, be sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and of course give this video a huge thumbs up. And with that being said, I think it's now time to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that huge thanks is going to go out to Flackrax. I think that's correct. Thank you so much, by the way, for your amazing support in choosing to support me over on the Discord by, of course, becoming a Discord premium member and supporting me in one of the best ways possible. You guys mean the world to me. I thank you so very much, and all of you guys for watching. Thank you as well. And guys, I hope you enjoyed and learned something new in today's episode. And if you did, comment down below. I would love to hear from you guys. And with that being said, it's now time for me to say goodbye. And as always, thanks for watching.